A lot of the time, when people are new to chess, one of the first things they try to study is opening theory. The masters play good openings, so if I play good openings, I must be good at chess too, right? But what if I told you the masters aren't always playing good theory? In fact, sometimes they're playing really questionable stuff. And so today, I've got 4 games here where the masters just played ridiculous opening stuff and maybe even just played bad stuff in the rest of the game. Let's just get started here. First game, Sumagliv versus Papanin. Hopefully I'm pronouncing those right. From Google, it sounds like these guys are both retired Russian international masters. Very good players, 2400-ish rated. Of course, they're going to play good openings. They would never play anything weird, such as, h4. Now for these guys, this is not that bad. It's only minus 0.6, but I'm just going to say it. If the computer is telling you made a mistake on move 1, probably rethink your theory, okay? Just rethink it. Now, of course, black just develops normally, and white just keeps pushing pawns. White just plays h5. Of course, fantastic. All right. So black just stops the pawn from coming forwards. I mean, he played h5, he's probably going to play h6. Let's stop him from doing that, okay? And now white just pretends that he didn't do that. He just pretends there isn't a pawn on h5, and immediately black makes a mistake and gives the advantage back. The problem with this is that you should have stopped the pawn from coming to d5. Now that the pawn can come to d5, it will come to d5, and it's a little awkward. This knight can't go here. You obviously can't take because the queen will just take. You could go here and try to dislodge it, but do you really want to allow this pawn to be this far forwards, right? So, fine, whatever. It's a weird opening. Black just says, all right, well, he pushed pawns. I want some of what he's on. I'm going to push my pawns too. And white says, I'm going to respond the same way he did, and I'm going to push my other flank pawn. All right. Black just pushes his pawn. We're just pushing pawns. That is literally this game so far. c4, e6. More pawns are being pushed. Now, this entire side of the board is just completely locked up. You're not really supposed to be playing for the sides of the board. You're not supposed to be locking things up. Normally, you would see the center of the board get locked. Okay, fine, whatever. Finally, a take happens. Capture happens. And this is actually very interesting. This is a very interesting moment here because normally you're taught as part of generically good principles, take towards the center, right? If you're going to take with the pawn, take towards the center. But in this case, this is actually not really the best idea. Now, the computer doesn't hate it. It's not bad, right? It's just not the best move. The reason it's not the best is because now your king is a little opened up. Remember this pawn that we put over here on h5? If the queen comes over here, there might be some justification for this pawn. There might be some long-term justification for this. And if you're going to justify your opponent's dumb opening moves, it's probably not a good move. And of course, white immediately goes for that. Now, this isn't really the best move because this doesn't threaten anything, of course. Like, you're going to give a check? Sure. The king's just going to go to e7. Who cares? You haven't developed any of your pieces. It is move 8. White hasn't moved any of their pieces yet. Unfortunately for black, black panics. Black says, I don't know what this guy's doing, but I want to stop it. So he plays king f7. And obviously the idea here is if white were to give this check, he wants to retreat his king here. But my question is why? Why did you want to retreat your king here? Because with your king here on g8, your rook's never going anywhere. That's a problem. That's a problem. Your king would have been better placed here. And if you give this check and your king goes here, then this was a wasted move because your king could have gone there in the first place. But okay, fine, the king goes here. It also defends this pawn maybe. So you can move this bishop. And then if there's a check like this, then it's not winning this pawn. Sure, okay. There's some justification here, but it's now plus 1.3 and white's kind of having their dumb stuff justified. But unfortunately, white immediately blunders back. What white should have done here is just develop their pieces because it's move 9. Okay, it's move 9. White hasn't developed a single piece. This goes against every opening principle that you're ever taught as a beginner. And on top of that, it blocks the queen. Like, you put your queen here to be on this diagonal, to come into g6, and you just played e4 and blocked it. But unfortunately for black, after developing this knight, which we should have done before, black immediately blunders right back and hangs a pawn. Alex, how does that hang a pawn? This pawn's defended 3 different ways. And look at that. We've only got 2 attackers. That can't possibly hang a pawn. Well, it does. It does hang a pawn. We take all of this. Your knight is hit. And you could say, okay, that's not a problem. I'll take here. This loses the game because White's idea with playing h5 is all of a sudden justified. Justified because of king f7. Because no matter where you go, you lose this knight. You can't stop that knight from being lost. Okay, fine. I just won't take this pawn with that knight. I'll take it with the queen. You can't do that either. Can't do that either. Because you put your king on f7, the bishop comes out, defended by the queen, pins the queen to the king. That's brutal. That's just brutal. Imagine that all of this absolute craziness back in the opening would lead to this pawn being hung. Oh, that's just tragic. That is very tragic. Unfortunately, White does not see it. White does not see it, and this is an inaccuracy because not only does it not take the free pawn, it allows this. Why is this such a big deal? Well, you see, if you go anywhere besides the best move with this queen, pawn takes pawn, and there is a center pawn fork defended by this knight. Oh boy, oh, this is a spicy game here. Now, this isn't the most accurate, apparently, but for humans, make threats, make threats. Fantastic. We've been playing spaghetti moves so far. Who's to say that White won't screw up? So, only move, defends this pawn. That's the only way to keep the defense of this, because it doesn't work here. If you try to play it here, I just take, right? It's not a center pawn fork because that's sufficiently defended. However, let's see. Let's see what happens. Black brings his knight in, clearly just going after this bishop. You cannot stop Black from trading this knight for the bishop. You just can't. And so we take the pawn. It's no longer a free pawn. First of all, because there's an extra defender here. But second of all, the queen is no longer on this square, so it can't go here. And the knight is no longer on this square, so it can't even be forked. But okay. Trade the knight for the bishop like we wanted to. Queen takes. Pawn takes. Knight comes in, gives his check. And like the king wanted to, he runs over here. And we see the problem. This rook, he's not playing the game. But okay, fine, whatever. We're out of the opening. We're into the middle game here. White's finally starting to move at least some of their pieces. I mean, it's move 15, and White's got one developed piece, and they haven't moved their entire queen side. But okay, Black hasn't moved quite a few pieces either, and this rook is miserable. Sure, fine. And White castles. I guess seeing that, you know, Black's pretending to have castled here. Just pretend this is not here and this bishop's a rook. Sure, cool, fantastic. Develop our bishop, gobble a free pawn, develop our other bishop. Let's not hang this knight. Knight comes here. Okay, the knight hits the rook. What do you play? Clearly, you would like to play something like this to not hang the rook, but that's also a little awkward. Maybe you don't want to do that, because with your rook here, it's going to take some time to get out. This knight's hard to dislodge because of h5. You could go here, but it's, I don't know, it's just not the best. Now, the computer actually wants you to play this first, no matter what. Just bully the queen a little bit, get some ideas of attacking the open file. Black just takes this pawn, but this isn't an inaccuracy for the reason you think it is. It's not an inaccuracy because of knight takes rook. It's an inaccuracy because of queen f3. Why can't White take the rook? If White takes the rook here, queen h4, who's attacking who? You have to play this, but I don't care. I'm sacrificing. And this is very nasty. Queen has to come here, defend against this, and sure, you've got this battery lined up, but the bishop and the rook defend this. This is threatened. The queen can't go anywhere. This is miserable. This is not good. But of course, that doesn't happen. These guys are, they may have played some weird stuff, but they're too good for that. That is not what happened. And the reason this was such an inaccurate move is because after the queen comes to f3, the knight is hit, the knight is not defended, and now this doesn't really work quite as well because the knight has to retreat. You cannot play this, obviously, because the knight is still here. The knight retreats, and now White takes the rook. Bit of an inaccuracy according to the computer. I don't care. It's a rook for a knight, okay? It's a rook for a knight. Fine. We're trading in. Let's see what happens here. Trade some more pieces. Trade some more pieces. Queen comes over here, doesn't get hung. King's looking kind of like he castled, but he's safe now, right? This king is safe, both kings are safe. But I would like to bring your attention to white's queen side. It is move 22. These players are 2,400 rated. And these pieces are literally not moving. This piece hasn't even technically moved either. White just castled, okay? This is just complete chaos. And so the bishop goes back, just avoiding any shenanigans of setting up a massive skewer here. And white develops the knight finally. Black develops the queen, maybe putting pressure on this pawn long term. We bring the rook over, putting some pressure on this bishop. Obviously, it's defended at the moment. But there's another reason for this. And immediately, this is justified. How does rook e8 justify this? Well, you see. Bishop takes pawn, and you cannot take this. The reason you cannot take this is because I take it with check, and your knight is hanging. You can defend like this, and your bishop is hanging, because a few moves ago, brought a rook to the d-file, double attack on the bishop. That's brutal. And if you try to move here, it's not this. It's not this. Because you lose like this. You lose your queen. You gotta be careful. You gotta play a move in between, give another check, and no matter where the king goes, you pick up the knight with check, and you're okay. And on top of that, this is an issue, so you cannot take that. You cannot take that bishop. Brutal move here. Very, very brutal move. Could have defended something like this, maybe something like this. Even maybe putting your rook here would have been, I don't know. There's other ways to defend this, but okay. Sacrifice the bishop, king moves, bishop comes back, and we're putting pressure on this diagonal. This rook still hasn't moved, by the way, but keep in mind, this pawn is hanging now. This pawn is hanging now. We didn't want to take it before because of this, skewering the queen and the bishop, and this was defended by the queen, so this puts pressure on the knight. So now if the queen does come here after this, the queen can escape, take a knight. You're not just losing this for free. And that's exactly what happens. Black goes and gobbles this pawn, but the problem is black's down material. It's plus 2 points. You can't be trading everything like this. You're getting a pawn back, but this is going to trade queens, trade rooks, and at the end of it, we get back that knight for the bishop. And here, this is just a completely winning endgame for white. We've got a 2-on-1, we've got a 1-on-1, and we've got a passed pawn. But let's be real. This passed pawn is going nowhere because white is up a rook for a knight. Black does his best to hold on, brings his pawn forwards so that after the bishop comes over here and attacks this pawn, you can play this. The rook can't come back this way, and these pawns are both defended. Rook comes over here, pins the knight. All right, king gets out of the way, defends the knight. Rook comes over here, attacks his pawn, gives an attack on the bishop. That's not a bishop, that's a rook. Knight comes over here, gives an attack on the rook. So you can't just take this. Rook comes over here and gives a check. All right. Now the pawn is going to be won. Fantastic. The pawn is won, and the game's over. Go back, attack the rook, and hilariously here, it doesn't lose the game. But white hangs a fork. How does this hang a fork? King d7. King d7. And every single piece is hanging. The rook sees the knight. The bishops see each other. The king sees the rook. Everything's hanging. You have to choose. If you take the knight, first of all, I can just take the rook. If you take here, that would just trade everything. If I take here, then you take here. Now it doesn't lose the game. White's still fine. White decides to take the bishop because after black takes the rook, white takes the pawn. And yeah, the game is over. The king can come over here. The king can try to stop this. The king can't come forwards. The knight can try to come in, but nothing is happening, right? There's this. So the king gets out of the way, so there's no fork. Knight goes back, maybe trying to push this pawn. Bishop goes over here, just cuts the king off a little bit more. And here we go. The king cannot go anywhere. The pawn's going to march. And after the bishop comes back, so it's not lost, still defending the pawn. After a few more moves, black does manage to pick up the pawn, but white's king gets in, and the game is over. Black resigns. Absolutely wild game. Absolutely wild. All of that stemming from just h4, h5. Complete chaos. But okay. Let's look at our second game here. Nicolas Rojas versus Alexander Voltsin. Don't know how to pronounce their names. I apologize. I couldn't find anything about Nicolas, but Alexander Voltsin is supposedly a Russian grandmaster at the moment. At the time, he was 2485 rated. Not quite grandmaster, but nonetheless, Two very, very strong players. Surely these guys would play a good opening, right? Bit of a spoiler there. I hit the wrong key. Sorry about that. All right. E3. This isn't bad. This isn't bad. I promised bad openings. What is this? This is not a bad opening. This is not bad. And of course, we're going to play maybe D4. Maybe we'll just develop this knight. Maybe we'll develop this knight. Maybe we'll even develop this bishop. Kind of weird, but maybe. Now we're going to play D3. Okay. This is a little slow. You're probably going to want to put one of these pawns in the center. So why bother putting them both only one square forwards? But okay. Black takes the center. Good principled move. And this is getting a little suspicious here. I'm not going to lie. This is... I don't know about this one, Chief. All right, fine. Black keeps some principles going. Okay, now surely D4 gets played. Break in the center. Justify all this. Could have just played that to begin with, but nope. Nope, that's not what's played. B3. Now there's something to be said for getting your opponent out of theory, but you probably don't want to lose while you're doing it. And after his next move, A3. I would say most people would rather have black in this position. I don't know. Maybe these guys know something I don't. This is weird. All right, it's time to play a good move, right? It's time. We've pushed all of our pawns from middle to the left. No. F3 and the position is minus 3.1. Black is completely winning on move 6 because white has literally done nothing besides push every pawn one square. This literally looks like a brand new player playing against like my grandpa. My grandpa told me to play chess like this. He told me, put pawns in the center, bring your knights out, put your bishops like, I don't know, maybe he plays here. Put the bishops like here, right? And then castle. This is how I was taught when I was a kid. My grandpa knows nothing about chess. And he's still playing better than this 2300 rated dude. But okay, fine. Maybe he's a good player. Just because his knights can't go anywhere. Just because his bishops can't go anywhere. What is this? What is this? Rook A2. Rook A2, what the heck? Why are you playing like this? I would say if this was a bad player, I would laugh at them too. But if this is a good player, they get laughed at more. Don't do this. What is Rook A2 in this position? What are you going to do? Defend your G pawn? Like, why? Why? For what purpose? What are you going to do next? Play G3, H3, Rook A2, try to put your knights in the center, bring everything to the side. What is this? And black just like, okay, I'm just going to play a normal game, I guess, brings the rook to the center. And now white starts trying to finally develop pieces. The problem is you can't actually really castle because if you try to put your knight the only square it can go, it can't really go forwards. If it goes here, it's going to get kicked out immediately. Can't go here, has to go back. Can't go here, it's immediately lost. Doesn't do anything here. Can't go here, can't go here, can't go here. This is stupid. And the black's just like, all right, I guess I'm just going to start pushing pawns at you too, I guess. And see, this is the thing. If you were going to play E4, what was the problem with just playing it earlier? You couldn't have your bishop here, but you don't need your bishop here to play E4. You don't need your bishop here to play E4. Just play F3, D3. Okay, fine. Black ignores it, just puts a pawn here. Always a nice move. Keeps the bishop from coming in. Always solid. We really got to talk about your pawn addiction, white. We really got to talk about your pawn addiction. Now, this isn't marked as a bad move because the position was already terrible. But the problem here is that you're weakening your king. You're just weakening your king. You played F3, now you're playing G4. If this knight gets out of the way, there is a real threat here of the queen coming in, giving a check, and your king's going to have to move. You're going to lose castling rights. It's going to be an awkward position. So black takes in the center. It's finally time. White's king is still in the center of the board, far away from castling because this is just completely absurd. And white takes back, perfectly reasonable. And the bishop's finally developed. Cool. Life is good. Life is good. Why didn't we just play this to begin with? I don't know. We wanted to push our pawns one square. All right, cool. And you're seeing the problem. The knights don't belong here. The knight doesn't belong here. Sure, this one has a little bit of space to move. He can go here, he can go here. But he's only got really two moves. Sure, he can go this way too, I guess. But where's he going from there, right? It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And exactly what we said was going to happen. The queen comes in. And you can't block because you pushed all your pawns. So you got to move your king. And black brings his rook to the center. And mate is threatened. There's a mate threat on the board. The bishop and the queen are teaming up because you pushed all your pawns in really stupid ways. Okay, cool. They're great players. I'm sure they know what they're doing. There's also a threat here. The queen is on the same line as a rook. If this knight moves, there is an attack on the queen, and the rook is defended multiple ways. So we have to do something about that, and this simultaneously defends against the mate threat. Cool. We don't want to trade queens, though. We don't want to trade queens. White's got a stupid position. Keep the queens on the board. Keep the attack going. Just slide back. It'll be okay. It's okay to go backwards sometimes, you know? It's okay to go backwards. And of course, the idea of rook a2 was rook b2. I mean, of course this was the idea. We're just going to... Of course this was the idea. Well, what does it do differently than on b1? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. A rook on b2 is clearly so much better. Bishop goes back, avoiding any sort of shenanigans here, trying to get in. Obviously, maybe not immediately, but that could have been the idea. And like we said, the knight has to go to the side of the board, and it looks kind of stupid here. So black's trying to break things open. You could say there's maybe incentive not to do this because we're already castled. After takes, maybe the queen's going to come in, but no. This is defended. There's just no attack here. So the knight comes in, hilariously, having this entirely justified. Defended by the bishop. All of a sudden, this knight's here. Sure, you can be kicked out, but that would block the queen. And when you go back, life is just completely okay. Even after takes, knight comes over here. Bishop's blocked off. Putting pressure here, and the knight's been justified. This knight is entirely justified now. Going here, here. If you're playing moves like this that justify your opponent playing e3, d3, c3, b3, a3, rook a2, f3, if you're justifying your opponent when doing this, please just punch your opponent in the face, hypothetically. Not like, don't like walk across the board and punch them, just like play moves that are like punching them in the face. Just go beat your opponent. Like this move earlier when it gave a check back, that punched the opponent in the face, right? I'm not saying go get violent, go get kicked out of a tournament, but okay. White's king is still miserable. White's king is still absolutely terribly placed here. And let's see what happens. King slides forwards. Now, actually, there's a funny thing here, which is that back here, I missed talking about this. White can actually threaten mate. White can actually threaten mate. Now, this isn't immediately mate, but let's say you play something like this. After this is mate, right? So this is actually, all of a sudden, literally everything is justified. Just literally everything is justified. So let's go back. We go here instead. Queen gives a check. We're defending against this. We're defending this pawn over protecting it. King comes forwards. And now, here we go. Queen goes here. Queen f3. Queen goes over here. So this looks like it hangs the knight. This straight up looks like it hangs the knight. Queen could take, right? Queen takes, and this knight's defended. But then bishop d5. You're pinned to your king. You lose your queen. You can't take that knight that way. Okay, fine. We won't take the knight that way. Instead, knight takes e4, right? I'm sure surely this would be reasonable. f6. Now you got to bring your knight back. And we've got the same problem. We've got exactly the same problem. Now you can play f takes g4 first. Maybe. You got plenty of things here. Queen goes back. If the queen goes back, though, because this is the only move that doesn't hang the queen. After this, you would have to go here to not hang the queen. Bishop sees this. There's this lining up on this. There's this, but doesn't, obviously not immediately taking it. After this, you would get checked, and you're getting mated. It's not immediately mate, but you're almost getting mated here. So instead of that, we go back here. White just takes the bishop. This bishop was causing all the problems in the position. We're just going to take the bishop, simplify, fantastic stuff. Gobble the pawn. Okay, finally White is losing. White's queen is open. The attack is gone. Black's king is getting a little opened up, but everything is okay. Trade the rooks. Trade the rooks. Knight goes back. We're going to trade knights. Nope. Bring our bishop over here first, put pressure on the queen. And black gives all the advantage up. It was -3 here, -2.6, because black has an attack. Because if you look at the material, black is only up 1 pawn. That's not a big deal. That's really not a big deal, especially with these doubled pawns in the center. This could very easily go away. And so going here and allowing this queen trade, there's just there's no threats anymore. You've even blocked off this line of attack. And so after the bishop comes in, and we play h4, taking some inspiration from the first game, trade the knights, play h5, the advantage is back. I lied to you. I lied to you. The advantage is back if you try to play this. And the reason the advantage is back is because this Tetris block of pawns is actually kind of a problem. I was saying these pawns are doubled. We've traded knights. We traded queens. These are no longer isolated doubled pawns. These are protected doubled pawns. This is scary. Like, this Tetris block is going to go forwards. And let's not forget, black is up a pawn. These pawns are not going anywhere. You can't really push these forwards. Sure, if you push this forwards, the king can't come forwards. But you can't push. If you try to give this check, the king will come here. Your bishop is hit. This is defended by the rook. You're not promoting. You're just not. So this bishop comes over here, hits the rook, threatens to trade bishops, and we trade bishops. And now black is cleanly up a pawn. And this bishop does nothing. The only way for it to get out is to come back here or something, and it still does nothing there. It can even be booted away by this pawn. You can try to go over here. It doesn't do anything. This bishop is not playing the game, essentially. If it tries to go here, pressure this, the king just comes and defends it. Everything is okay. Now white tries to make some play here. White tries to break through, sacrifices a pawn, because after this, you would give this check, and this pawn is now hit, picking up another pawn, threatening the knight. Maybe we're going to get in on the Tetris block. Maybe we'll even go here, go after this side of the Tetris block. Maybe that would be good, but black doesn't allow that. If the pawn takes, it's not a big deal. If the pawn pushes, then there is no more breaking through here because we have the wrong colored bishop. This bishop can't attack this. And of course, pawn goes forwards, and that's what I said. We have the wrong bishop. Our rook is not getting around here. Our rook would have to go here, here, here to take this. And at that point, obviously this pawn's going to defend. So okay, knight goes back, threatens to trade for the bishop. Bishop goes back, don't want to lose the pawn. Obviously takes. And yeah, it should be over here, shouldn't it? It should indeed be over. So let's see how they play the endgame. King comes forwards. King's threatening to go win these pawns. Trade some pawns. Trade some rooks. Put the knight in the middle of the board. Don't trade yet, though. Don't trade with the bishop. You still need this bishop, because if it's king versus pawns, the pawns are winning. Two pawns. You can't stop two pawns with the king. We'll go here maybe if takes, and you can't stop all of this, right? Like, this is going to be a problem. So, pawn comes forwards, locks things up, and the bishop is now officially locked out of the game for the moment. He can still come around. He can defend the base of this. He can go around here. But these are all on dark squares. These are on dark squares. This is the only light squared pawn, and the only way to get to it is through here or here. And the king is going to stop that. Okay. Knight comes in. Maybe we'll trade for this at some point. Maybe it prevents this. Who knows? That was already kind of prevented, so not a big deal. Endgame stuff happens. Endgame stuff happens. Endgame stuff happens. Knight gets shuffles around. The bishop gets in like I said it would, but it's not doing anything. The knight blocks it off entirely. Bishop comes back because it wasn't doing anything. King comes forwards. All right. And finally, it's looking like black's can go after this pawn. Now, the thing is here, black has to be careful. Not right now, but black does have to be careful because there is another pawn here. You cannot just take this pawn at all points and say, I've got a pawn, I'm happy. Because if this pawn can make it to h8, it becomes a queen, and the king cannot catch up to it. So you're relying on this knight. The knight is the last line of defense here. So you have to be very, 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 very careful. Like, just for example, if takes here, push. Here, here. Right? Here, here. How are we going to stop this? If you go here, I take your knight. You can take this pawn. I've gotten your knight. I've got your knight. You can no longer win these pawns. Maybe it's not actually so bad. I'm not even losing anymore as white. You have to be very, very careful in this endgame. A single bad move could just lose the game for you. So instead of that, why is this a blunder? Unfortunately, it hangs this fork. Hangs this fork. Now, of course, it's not losing a bishop. It's a trade. But with that bishop off the field, remember, again, cannot take this because this will promote, especially with the knight gone. All we need to do is push this pawn. Your king is behind enemy lines, and he can no longer catch up to this pawn. And actually, one last trap here. One very funny last trap. If you take this, it's not good. It's not good because after this, you can push. I will give a check. Here, 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 here. You queen, I queen. And this is a draw. This is actually a draw. And all of that stems from the fact that if you were to take this pawn right here, this would come with check. So instead of that, you have to be patient, move back one. Now this pawn is still defended. Still cannot catch this pawn. If you go here, you can take this time, because after this, well, first of all, you can get in front of the pawn. You can get in front of the pawn. There is no more check, right? So that's it. That's it. Gobble. I am far enough back. Yeah, we gobble the pawn, get in front. Actually, the game ended earlier. I think I actually played a couple extra moves, but okay. Finally, the game ends. White resigns. Black wins. And I would hope White's resigning with an opening like this. I mean, like, if you're a grandmaster and you lose to this, I would be a little embarrassed. I'm going to be honest. So let's look at our third game here. We got two more games here. This one, players need no introduction, but I will introduce them anyway. Wei Yi and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. More commonly known as MVL, two of the top grandmasters in the world. These guys are absurdly good. So how did they make it into this game? How did they make it into this video? Well, we got MVL with the white pieces playing the grub. The grub opening, you may see the evaluation here in the corner. Minus 1.5. This is pretty much the worst opening move you can possibly play. And the funny thing is, MVL played this 3 times against Wei Yi. One time playing the line we're about to see here. The other 2 times, 6 days later, playing G5 on move 2. So apparently he liked this. Apparently he just liked playing the grub. Now my guess is he wanted to get Wei out of opening prep. And Wei says, all right, I want to brawl. You want to play G4? I'm going to play H5. So they take, and there is just a rook on H5. There's just a rook on H5 in a game between the 2 top grandmasters in the world. This literally looks like a Guess the Elo episode. And again, White just pretends this is completely normal. And there's a rook on E5. Okay. Now, if you put a rook on E5 on move 3, someone should probably take away your license to move your rooks. And in this case, it's also pretty bad. But he played this because it puts pressure on this pawn, right? Pawn is now pinned to the king. Taking would come with check. So White has to defend. White does defend. Fantastic. We put some more pressure on this, threatening to take this. Obviously, this is defended. We go here. Very natural move. Kicks the rook away. And so the rook goes back, keeps this pawn pinned. Actually kind of important, because if you don't keep the pawn pinned, this pawn is hanging. Never thought we would see an important rook on this, but okay, fine. The computer actually thinks it would have been okay to sack the rook for the pawn, by the way. It thinks that there's enough compensation here just in positional advantages. It's a little ridiculous. But finally, the pawn is taken. Knight goes over here because, obviously, rook defends this. So the knight goes over here, hits the pawn, hits the rook. The rook's going to move. And of course, we're going to take this pawn and we're going to get into a simple game. No. Of course not. We develop the bishop, get a little fancy here, put some pressure on this, attacked both by the knight and the bishop. Go here, cut off the attack from that. Still not taking the pawn is MVL. Pushes H4. H4 is a really popular move in terrible openings, isn't it? People just like pushing their flank pawns, I guess. It's kind of exciting. Kind of exciting to just shove pawns at your opponent. But okay, this defends this against ideas of maybe sacking for it. We're not even sacking for it, that's just a good exchange. So that defends the knight. We don't want to take yet. I don't know why we don't want to take yet, but we don't want to take yet. Develop our bishop. Fantastic. These guys, they're actually developing pieces. Cool. And queen h5. Yeah. Plus 1.6, minus 0.3. So why is this a bad move? Why is it a good move? Why? Like, what does this do? What's the idea here? Like, what are you going to do? Sack your knight to remove the pawn and take the rook like the king just defends? What are you going to do? Put your queen back here, pin the knight, like give a check if the knight moves? Your queen doesn't do anything here. Your queen doesn't do anything. And black's going to trade. Black's going to double your pawns. Black's going to bring his knight out, hit your queen, and now your queen has to either go backwards, like all the way backwards, defended, covered, like, or go here. White goes here. White trades the queen. And sure, black doesn't have castling rights, but another player has a queen, and there is just no G pawn or B pawn for white. Like those are just missing. Those are just completely missing. But okay, you don't need castling rights if there's no threat. White decides to castle. I mean, I would hardly call this a castle anymore. I would call this like a ruined fort, maybe. But sure, fine, fantastic. We're playing normal chess now. We're gonna Fee and Keto our bishop, and of course, just rook g1, rook dg1. This rook is now kind of miserable. He can go forwards, I guess, but like maybe setting up some sort of defense of this knight over protection of it. Maybe some sort of idea of trading rooks, getting in on this file, taking this pawn. Maybe that's the idea. But the bishop comes out. We're just developing pieces normally. And that was exactly the idea, actually. That was exactly the idea. Because h5 is played, and the rook is actually pretty awkward now. The rook has to go here. Don't really want to take here and just lose a rook for a knight. So rook goes here. Because this, I mean, this was already defended, but who cares? Who cares? So the bishop comes back, defending this pawn in extra time. Now that it's attacked, the knight comes forwards. The rook goes forwards, putting pressure on this pawn. Still never took this, by the way. Remember, we put this knight here so long ago. We could have taken this pawn. We could have taken this pawn. We just didn't. And now we're trying to take it. Now we're trying to put pressure here. And rook a h8, putting some pressure on this. Now, is this a bad move? Maybe not necessarily, but it does lose the pawn. That's the thing. It does lose the pawn. So, at this point, rook is hanging. Knight is hanging. Knight takes knight, though. So why not bishop takes rook? Why not? Well, because this is played. I forgot to play this move. This is played. So why not bishop takes rook here? This is actually, it looks good. You're up 2 points of material, but you got to look at what your opponent has. Your opponent has knight takes c3. You could say, why does not take my bishop? Why does none of this happen? Well, the problem now, this is hit. And if you try to save your bishop or something, maybe try to like go here, he takes your bishop with check, picking up your other rook or something. And there's not a good way to defend this. If you try to go here, avoid this, defend that fork, well, first of all, this pawn is hanging. Sure, you could have gone here. But your bishop is still hanging. So you cannot do that. You cannot take that rook. Very, very fancy, very complicated position here. So that's not what happens. Rook takes knight, and the rook goes back. Because now, of course, with that knight gone, you can, in fact, take that rook. So we push the pawn, trying to dislodge this maybe. Take some space, put some pressure on this pawn that's pinned to the king. Knight goes backwards, and that's not a good move. It's okay. It's not that bad. But white has now kind of locked this bishop in jail a little bit. You still can't take. Remember, this is pinned. And the knight's going to reroute. The reason this was a bad move, by the way, is because why is your knight going here? Like, why not just here? Why are you putting your knight on the side of the board? Sure, it can go here, I guess, but just it's kind of awkward. It's just kind of an awkward knight. Putting your knight back in your starting square, not a great idea usually. But he had an idea. It was to reroute it here. I don't hate it. I love it, actually. Very good stuff. Bishop comes over here, putting pressure on a pawn. And the knight comes over, blocking the attack on the pawn. And additionally, adding an attacker to this, making it so that maybe in the future we'll be able to take this. Rook goes back, doesn't get hit by the knight anymore. Fantastic stuff. And this is a blunder. This is a blunder. Why is this a blunder? It doesn't look that bad, does it? We're getting out of the way of this pinned pawn. Well, you see, it hangs a knight. Why? Why is this so? What's the point? Here, this is the point. Because this hits the pawn, and this pawn is the only defender of this knight. You cannot take because you lose the knight. But okay, I'll take like this. There's a problem with that, though. Rook takes pawn. Rook takes g7. And now the knight is hanging. But it's not really hanging, right? It's defended by the rook. So why is this such a big deal? Because rook takes other pawn. Rook takes other pawn. And if the king had been back here, it could have defended. And sure, it could go back now. But you've already lost a pawn. You've already lost a pawn. And then maybe there's other ideas. Maybe there's this even. I don't know. And now you cannot move this knight because your rook hangs. So he gives a check, tries to stall a little bit. King slides out of the way. You don't really have a choice. You kind of just have to give this up. You can't just lose a piece for free. So you got to lose an exchange. And white's up 2 points of material. White's just cleanly up 2 points of material here. It's not good. It's not good. Despite playing the Grob, we ended up in a completely winning position. So the knight has to go back, obviously hit by pawn. give some checks, shuffle pieces around, trade some pawns in the center. And this is not a great move, but there's a little bit of a fancy thing going on here. And that fancy thing is this. So why is this so fancy? Well, there's a lot of things happening here. Specifically, somewhere around here. Somewhere around here, there's some fancy stuff going on. First of all, this. Bishop is hit, bishop is hit. You take the bishop, I take your bishop. Fantastic. But black has a bit of desperado idea here, which is this. And you're going to take this, and then you take this. But it gets better than that. It gets better than that. Because instead of any of that, black goes here. Black goes here. Why is this so fancy? Because this allows that. And the rooks are forked. What you had to do was just be calm, slide over here, get out of the way of this, maybe have some ideas of giving a check later, keep your eyes on this bishop, keep your eyes on this pawn. That's what you had to do. It's not what he did, though. It's not what he did, and he hung a fork. So remember, you are never too high elo to hang a fork. You're never too high elo to hang a fork. It happens to all of us. The horse moves in mysterious ways. Not everyone can predict its aggressive movements. All right. Your knight is hit, counterattack the bishop, trade some pieces, and it's a draw. It's a draw. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah. And in this position, they actually agreed to do a draw. Moments ago, we hung a fork, and they're like, yeah, you know, we hung one fork. That's our quota for the game. We'll just agree to a draw here. I don't know, man. I don't know what to say. You play the grub and you get a draw against one of the top players in the world. That's why he's one of the top players in the world. MVL, Wei Yi, they're real good. Now, I promised the games would get worse as they went on. The openings would get worse. How can we get worse than the objective worst first move in the game? Well, we've got a game here. You may have heard of this one. This is a bit of a well-known one. I wanted to include it anyway because it was pretty funny. But there is a story behind this game. There is, in fact, a story behind this game. I will tell you it after we look at the moves. Let's look at the moves, though. Robert Hübner, and Kenneth Rogoff. Hübner is a German grandmaster, I believe, and Kenneth is an American grandmaster. I think they are. So we start out with c4. Very reasonable move. Knight f6, very reasonable. Knight f3, g6. This is completely reasonable. Actually, a bit of a fun fact. Hübner actually has a line of the Nimso Indian named after him. I don't actually have the moves here, but I think I do actually have the moves. Yeah. So this right here is, I believe, the Hübner variation of the Nimso Indian. So these guys are serious players. These guys are very serious players. This is Theory, Hübner variation, Nimso Indian. Kind of crazy looking, but very, very strong players. He's not playing his Theory, but fantastic. And the chaos starts on move 3. Knight back to g1. Knight back to g1. What is this? What is that? Why are you developing your knight and undeveloping your knight? Why are you playing queen a4? And Black's just like, okay, I'm going to castle. Queen takes d7. What is this? He just hung his queen in one move. There's not too much to say here. This hangs the queen 3 different ways. Of course, Black takes it. And feeling a little bad for his opponent, Black takes on d2 with his queen. And just takes the free pawn. White decides to hang his rook. Bishop hits the rook. Black doesn't take it, of course. Black doesn't take it, of course. What would you expect? They both hung their queens. We're just pushing all the pawns. Hangs our bishop. Hangs the bishop right back. Knight's developed. Bishop goes all the way to h8, insisting on hanging it. The bishop is trapped. I don't know why you didn't just take it. Bishop is trapped. h4 is played. A takes b4. And because this is a perfect game of chess, and all perfect games of chess end in a draw, the players agreed to a draw right here. But that's not actually true. They didn't agree to a draw here. They actually agreed to a draw here, and this is the story behind it. Robert Hübner, he played this move and offered a draw to Kenneth. I couldn't find the details on why. I believe he just had a lot of stuff he was busy with and didn't have time to play. But essentially, the arbiters said, okay, look, guys, you can't just play one move and agree to a draw. So they insisted that they play some moves. And so this happened. And so this happened. probably the worst game of chess between two grandmasters you will ever see. Now, not a super serious game, but nonetheless, this is a tournament game. It's in the Lee Chess Masters database. Now, the arbiters said, okay, guys, calm the heck down. You can't do that. You guys must both apologize and play an actual game at 7 p.m. Rogoff appeared and said, yeah, sorry, you're right. Shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have trolled so much. Rogoff was the one with the black pieces. White is the one who asked for a draw. He neither showed up nor did he apologize. And they started the clock and he lost the game. He lost the game. He didn't play any moves. He just lost on the rematch at 7. So, hey, you know, whenever you're having doubts about your own chess skill, just remember this is a real game. Kind of a real game. This is a game that was played in a tournament that made it into the Masters database. At least your games don't look like this. So yeah, there we have it. Some of the worst openings ever played by master level players. I would say maybe openings aren't the end all be all to chess. They're certainly helpful. But hey, if they can get away with playing stuff like this, they can get away with, you know, pushing all their pawns. So can you. So can you. So yeah, there were some other more well-known bad games that I didn't play or that I didn't look at here because I wanted to look at some lesser-known ones. If you guys want to see those, or if you guys have any particularly bad games that you thought I should look at, do let me know in the comments. I'm absolutely down to do more of this if you guys like it. Yeah, that's all I've really got, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day, rest of your whatever it's going to be, evening, week. I will see you guys next time. Get out of here. Bye-bye.